Beatrice Ginsel, you stand charged on indictment with blackmail under Section 21 of the Theft Act. Particulars of the offence being that in a letter dated February the 21st, 1983, and addressed to Sir Roland Richardson at the Firs, Belmont Road, Fulchester, with a view to gain for yourself, you made an unwarranted demand of £200 from Sir Roland Richardson with menaces. To this indictment, do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
The case you're about to see is fictional, but the procedure is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the public.
Can you imagine what it must have felt like for a family man, married with 3 children, well-known figure in this community, when he receives a letter saying he's the father of another woman's child? The prosecution will maintain that this allegation was accompanied by a threat of exposure if the sum of £200 was not paid, and also that the allegation itself is unwarranted and unjustified, that Sir Roland Richardson was not, and indeed could not, have been the father of Mary Ginsel's child. My Lord, may I request that this witness's name is not reported in the press? The witness is a well-known public figure.
In what capacity, Mr. Marchington?
He's a member of Parliament for Fulchester West, my lord.
Yes, Sir Roland Richardson. Mrs. Hunter, do you have any objection to Mr. Marchington's request?
No, none at all, my lord.
Very well. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, the name of this witness is not to be reported in any account of these proceedings, nor are you to mention the fact that he is a member of Parliament, nor any other details about him which could identify him. Proceed, Mr. Marchington.
I'm obliged, my lord. Sir Roland, did you receive a letter at your home address dated February the 21st, 1983, and signed Mary?
Yes, I did.
My lord, may this letter be Exhibit 1? The letter to Sir Roland and its authorship are agreed.
Mrs. Hunter?
No, that's right, my lord.
Very well. Are copies available, Mr. Marchington?
Yes, they are.
Very well.
Is this the letter you received, Sir Roland?
It is.
It's not very long, is it, Mr. Marchington? Perhaps you'd care to read it to us, Mr. Marchington.
Very well, my lord. Dear Roland, why on earth have you stopped the money? What do you expect Gavin and me to live on? You can't just walk away from us like this, you know, after all I put up with. I want next month's payment. I want the £200 for March in full, and I want it now. If you don't send the money within 1 week, I shall write to the recorder about you. And how will that look come election time, Sir Roland? My dear. The letter is signed Mary. Sir Roland, did you know why the defendant Mary Ginsel wanted money from you?
Yes. She'd frequently maintained that I was the father of her child.
The child is the Gavin mentioned in the letter?
Yes.
And are you the father of the defendant's child?
No, absolutely not.
And you say this allegation was made frequently?
Yes. There was a stream of letters to the Firs, my home address. Some of them were rather embarrassing.
In what way?
Well, they were almost love letters in a confused sort of way. She called me Roly, said, why didn't I come to see her anymore? She said the baby missed me,
Did Miss
that sort of thing.
Did Miss Ginsel mention money in these letters?
Obliquely. She said she was hard up. There were veiled cries for help. I felt very sorry for her.
When did you receive these letters?
At the end of 1982 until February 1983.
Until February 83. Did you reply to any of them?
No.
Did you know that the defendant had also written a letter on the same subject to the Fulchester Recorder in March 83? My lord, this letter is also agreed.
Very well, Mr. Marchington.
Yes, I did. The editor of the Recorder, Alisdair Miller, rang me. He read the letter to me over the telephone.
Sir Roland, what was your relationship with Mary Ginsel?
I know Mary quite well. I've known her for some years. I was honorary chairman of the Fulchester Philatelic Society for many years. Mary was on the committee. We're very proud of her at the society. She also acted as my agent. By that I mean she attended stamp auctions for me and bid on my behalf.
Have you ever visited the defendant at her home?
Yes, frequently.
Now, who instigated these visits?
Well, Mary. It was her flat. She invited me.
When did these visits begin, Sir Roland?
Late in 1979.
And what was the purpose of these visits?
We discussed philately. Mary would advise me on my collection generally. Then we would look at the catalogues for forthcoming auctions and decide what she should bid for on my behalf.
And did these transactions involve you giving the defendant money?
Yes. I gave her 1% of the value of any purchase she made in my name.
And what sort of sums would be involved?
Oh, quite small sums. I would spend, say, £900 at an auction. That would make Mary's honorarium £9.
And when did these payments begin?
Late in 1979.
79. Oh, that is before the birth of Miss Ginsel's child?
Yes. Gavin was born in 1980.
Sir Roland, did you always give Miss Ginsel the money personally, or did you sometimes send it through the post, or did you...
I always gave it to her. There was no reason to send money through the post.
Does the sum of £200 mentioned in the letter have any significance for you?
Absolutely none. I was, and am, mystified by it.
Sir Roland, did you ever give Miss Ginsel money for any purpose not connected with stamps?
No, never.
Now, Sir Roland, I'd like you to think back to the winter of 1979.
What is the significance of that period, Mr. Marchington?
My lord, the defendant's son, Gavin, was born in July 1980.
Good. I don't believe you mentioned that fact before, Mr. Marchington.
No, my lord, I was just about to. Sir Roland, in the winter of 1979, at the time of the defendant's son's conception, did you have a sexual relationship of any kind with Mary Ginsel?
No, absolutely not. I don't wish to be unchivalrous in any way, but the idea is absurd. In any case, I'm a married man with 3 children.
Your friendship was entirely connected with philately.
Absolutely. Look, I would come in and put my albums down, with some relief, I might say, on a little coffee table that Mary had in the middle of her room. She would usually make us a cup of tea. The kitchen was across the hall. It's communal, I think. She came back, and we would discuss philately. And that was all. Mary has no small talk. We have nothing in common outside stamps. Moved in completely different circles.
And how often did these visits take place?
In 1979, about once a fortnight. Later, they became less frequent. Our contact tailed off sometime towards the end of 1982.
Did you ever see anybody else at the defendant's flat?
Yes. Now and again. There was a fellow there by the name of Lee Sinclair. He described himself as a musician.
When did you first meet Lee Sinclair?
In 1979. The door to Mary's flat was ajar. I walked in. Mary was in her dressing gown. And there was a fellow in her bed. Later on, he came out and introduced himself as Lee Sinclair.
So Lee Sinclair was actually in Mary Ginsel's bed?
Yes.
Now, you're quite sure about that?
Positive. I could quite clearly see the upper part of his body above the blankets. The upper part of his body was naked.
Thank you, Sir Roland. Please remain where you are.
Sir Roland, has your wife ever met Miss Ginsel?
Once or twice, yes.
And do you ever tell your wife about your visits to Miss Ginsel's flat?
No. I don't think I made a specific point of mentioning them, no.
And did you tell her about Miss Ginsel's letters to you?
No, I didn't.
Why not, Sir Roland?
My wife is an invalid. She has multiple sclerosis. I didn't want to worry her.
Oh, so your wife has never heard anything adverse about your relationship with Miss Ginsel?
No, she hadn't.
Then did you not resign from the Fulchester Philatelic Society in May 1980 because of the scandal concerning your relationship with Miss Ginsel?
No. I resigned because of the pressure of House of Commons work.
Oh, very well, Sir Roland. Well, now, let us turn to the letter itself. I suggest to you that Miss Ginsel believes she was writing to the father of her child. And I put it to you, Sir Roland, that you are the father.
That is not so.
And I put it to you that you've been making payments for the financial support of Gavin Ginsel.
That is not so.
Sir Roland, Miss Ginsel wrote, "What on earth do you expect Gavin and me to live on?" And later, I want next month's payment. Now, does that not suggest to you that there had been regular payments in previous months?
I've no idea. There had been no such payment.
Well, the letter also refers to the £200 for March. Now, the £200 suggests the usual 200, or the 200 that you know about. Isn't that so?
Madam, I can only repeat that this reference means nothing to me.
Now, Sir Roland, yes, in the first line of the letter, she says, "Why on earth have you stopped the money?" Now, to stop a payment, it must have been made regularly, isn't that so? Or does that mean nothing to you either?
Well, perhaps she was referring to the honorarium I paid her as my agent. She was not a rich woman. I think that money was important to her.
Oh, come, Sir Roland, surely Miss Ginsel wouldn't threaten to write to a newspaper because you'd stop payments in the order of £9.
Mary Ginsel is a highly intelligent and in many ways a kind woman. Even now, I don't wish to be harsh about her, but she often says, does, and writes things that are totally inexplicable.
Yes, such as calling you Roly and writing love letters to you.
Precisely.
And requesting money from you.
Yes.
Now, all of which becomes explicable and even reasonable if she believed that you had fathered her child, paid £200 a month maintenance for 2.5 years, and then stopped.
That may be your interpretation, madam, but it is not what happened. So I say again that I did and do find these letters baffling and a source of great embarrassment to me, professionally and personally.
Sir Roland, why did you stop seeing Miss Ginsel? Your last visit was in January 1983, was it not?
Well, there was a variety of reasons. Pressure of work. It was becoming difficult to talk to Mary with the baby screaming all the time. The flat was depressing. Sinclair kept turning up.
But you broke off your contact with Mary Ginsel, leaving her no alternative but to write to you if she wished to get in touch.
No, she hadn't. But that was no reason to write a letter like this, was it? I mean, what does Mary think she's playing at? This is totally uncalled for. Totally uncalled for.
Is it, Sir Roland? And you have already told the court that you did not reply to the letter.
No, I haven't.
So after February 1983, Miss Ginsel had no way of communicating with you about a wrong that she felt had been done to her.
I'm in the telephone book, madam.
Sir Roland, now let us return to your visits to Miss Ginsel in 1979, the period when the defendant's child was conceived. You say your visits were prearranged and at Miss Ginsel's invitation.
That is so.
And how did you surprise her, as you said, with Lee Sinclair in her bed?
Mary had left her bedroom door open. If she hadn't, I couldn't have known he was there.
But you testified that Miss Ginsel was in her dressing gown. Would she have been in her dressing gown if she'd been expecting you?
Well, it was surprising, yes. But as I say, Mary is eccentric.
Now, you had your stamp albums with you on that occasion, did you not? How
Yes.
many stamp albums?
Well, 2, sometimes 3. One for Great Britain, 2 for British Commonwealth. My special area of interest is George V issues.
And presumably you carried the glue with you for the stamps.
One doesn't use glue, madam, unless one's a schoolboy. One uses Howard strips.
Oh, I see. So the stamps are detachable from the album.
Madam, they would be of very little value if they were not.
Yes, I see. Now, how far is your house from Mary Ginsel's flat?
15 miles.
Yes. So you transported 2 or 3 heavy stamp albums 15 miles and carried them up 3 flights of stairs when you could have easily detached the stamps you wished to discuss. Now, why did you do that?
Madam, one doesn't split up an album for journeys. The risk of loss or damage is too great.
I think you had your stamp albums with you to make your visits look respectable, did you not?
No. My visits were perfectly respectable. Nothing improper was taking place.
Then why didn't you meet at your house?
I kept asking her, but she wouldn't come. I think perhaps the idea of the furs alarmed her.
Now, Sir Roland, I put it to you that the reason you did not meet Miss Ginsel at your house was because you had not told your wife about her. That is what you told the court earlier, was it not?
I swear by Almighty God, the evidence I give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Jean Thompson, of flat 2B, Mulberry Buildings, Rawlings Road, Fulchester.
Yes.
What is your occupation, Mrs. Thompson?
I haven't really got one.
You're unemployed?
Oh, no, nothing like that. I have a small widow's pension. My husband was an engineer. He was killed in an industrial accident. And I supplement the pension with various activities. I pack fireworks, I do advertising surveys. Sometimes I work for the double glazing people, and I do a bit of babysitting.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Your flat is immediately below the flat of the defendant, Mary Ginsel?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson, could you speak up a little, please?
Sorry, yes, my flat is below Mary's.
Carry on, Mr. Marchington.
Is there a lift in Mulberry Buildings?
Oh, no, it's not that sort of place at all.
Oh, so visitors to Miss Ginsel's flat have to pass your door to get to her flat?
That's right.
Now, you've lived at 2 Mulberry Buildings since 1979, is that correct?
Yes, since my husband was killed, I had to sell the house.
The court is interested in the winter of 1979. Please cast your mind back and tell the court of any visitors you saw going to Miss Ginsel's flat at that time.
I think Mary's only ever had 2 visitors in all the time I've known her. Sir Roland Richardson and Lee Sinclair.
And how often did Lee Sinclair visit Miss Ginsel?
In the winter of 1979?
Yes.
Oh, he was there all the time. I saw him leave once or twice early in the morning, and I often saw him in the kitchen. I should explain, I used the 3rd floor kitchen at that time. The gas in the 2nd floor kitchen was out of action for months. When I was working, I would go up to the 3rd floor kitchen for an early morning cup of coffee and a chat with Lee. He was there most mornings.
What impression did you form of his relationship with the defendant?
I rather assumed they were living together.
What made you think that?
Well, for one thing, he used to pad around wearing nothing but a sort of caftan thing. I would say to him, "You must be freezing," but he just gave me that funny sort of glazed smile of his. We'd have a chat, then he'd make 2 cups of coffee and go back into Mary.
And was there anything else you saw or heard which gave you an impression of the defendant's relationship with Lee Sinclair?
I saw them once or twice outside my flat door. I was coming in from work and they were having a quick kiss and a cuddle. I must say I thought they might have waited till they got upstairs. The only other time I saw them more or less in flagrante was a bit different. Lee was sitting on the stairs crying. Mary had her arms round him. I don't know what that was all about. I just hurried by.
And aside from these chance meetings, did you ever see Mary Ginsel and Lee Sinclair socially?
Not in 1979, no. I got the impression that Mary was, well, rather possessive about him.
What made you think that, Mrs. Thompson?
I invited Lee round for a fondue one evening. We'd been talking in the kitchen the day before and I thought it would be nice. Well, about an hour before he was due to arrive, Mary appeared at the door. She said Lee couldn't come. She said he was ill. Well, obviously, I'd bought the meat by then and I couldn't really afford it. I was rather upset.
Did you believe Lee Sinclair was ill?
He might have been, I suppose. His health wasn't particularly good, but at the time I thought it was an excuse. I thought they just wanted to be alone together.
Mrs. Thompson, later on, when the defendant's son Gavin was born, did you ever see Lee Sinclair with Gavin?
Yes. Mary and I had become much closer by then. This is 1980 to 81 you want now, is it?
Yes.
Yes. It's just that Mary and I did fall out later, but that's another story. When Gavin was very little, Mary used to ask me about babies. I have a son, you see, Barry. He's 17 now. I'm awfully sorry, I've forgotten what you asked me.
Oh, that's all right, Mrs. Thompson. I asked you if you ever saw Lee Sinclair with Gavin. I'd like you to tell the court how Lee Sinclair behaved with Gavin.
Yes. Lee used to play with Gavin. Used to sing lullabies to him. Used to goo over him. That's the only way I can put it, really. He used to go all unnecessary. Mind you, Lee had perked up a bit by then. He used to get so depressed. It was terrible. There were some mornings I'd find him in the kitchen crying.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Now, was it your impression that Mr. Sinclair's behavior with Gavin went beyond, say, that of a friend of the family?
Oh, definitely.
Now, returning to the winter of 1979, you said that you'd met Sir Roland then. Oh, yes, when did you first see him?
In October 1979.
And where was this meeting?
Well, I often saw him on the stairs. He was always a bit out of breath, puffing and blowing, carrying his stamp albums.
Did you ever speak to him?
Oh, not then, no. He just used to say, "Good day, madam," and that was it. But a bit later on, this is still 1979, I think, yes, he knocked on my door and we met.
Why did he knock on your door?
Well, he gave this thunderous knock. I very nearly didn't open up at all. Then he said, "Madam, there's a very strong smell of gas coming from your kitchen." Well, I knew that, obviously. That's why I was using the kitchen upstairs.
Well, then what happened?
He marched straight in, grabbed the telephone and dialed the gas board engineer. Not the showroom, Mark. You Lord knows how he knew the number. Anyway, the gas board people were there in half an hour, and I'd been trying to get them to come for a month about one thing and another.
And was that the only meeting, your only meeting with Sir Roland?
Oh, no. He insisted I came down to his constituency surgery the next time. We went through all the problems at Mulberry Buildings, the gas and the damp course, and we were having awful problems with vandals. Anyway, Sir Roland went through all that, and he wrote to the landlord. He was marvellous.
Did Miss Ginsel ever mention Sir Roland?
Oh, yes.
Did she ever intimate that she had a sexual relationship with him?
Good heavens, no. I wouldn't have believed it if she had.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Thompson, have you ever had a sexual relationship with Lee Sinclair?
What? I'm afraid I don't wish to answer that.
Quite so. Well, no, this is surely not relevant.
Mrs. Hunter?
Oh, my lord, I wish to establish that the witness's evidence is affected by jealousy where Lee Sinclair is concerned.
Mrs. Hunter, if you are suggesting that the witness had sexual relations with Lee Sinclair, I hope you intend to support this contention with evidence.
Yes, I am indeed, my lord.
I'm sorry. I came here in good faith to give evidence about Mary Ginsel. If I'd known you was going to ask me questions about Lee, I wouldn't have come.
Mrs. Thompson, I sympathise, but I must instruct you to answer the question.
Very well. Under protest. Lee and I have made love, yes.
And when was this, Mrs. Thompson?
February 1983.
Are you in love with Lee Sinclair?
Yes, I suppose so.
And you still see him?
No, he's gone back to Mary.
Yes, well, I put it to you, Mrs. Thompson, that you resent the fact that he's gone back to Miss Ginsel, that you're getting back at him by attributing paternity of Gavin to him.
That's not true.
But Lee Sinclair couldn't possibly afford maintenance payments for a child, could he, Mrs. Thompson?
I wouldn't do anything so vindictive.
Mrs. Thompson, you said that on one occasion you saw Lee Sinclair sitting on the stairs crying, and Mary Ginsel had her arms round him. Now, was Miss Ginsel saying anything as they sat there?
As far as I can remember, she said, come on, it'll be okay, something like that.
And did that indicate a sexual relationship to you?
Well, they weren't kissing, if that's what you mean. Not then, anyway.
Very well, then. Now, let's turn to Sir Roland Richardson. Mrs. Thompson, when Sir Roland knocked on your door to tell you about the smell of gas, was that the first time you'd met him?
Apart from seeing him on the stairs, yes.
But you had worked for him before, had you not?
Yes, in the 1979 general election.
So you support Sir Roland's political views and you admire him?
Yes. I think he does a marvellous job for Fulchester.
Is that why you told my learned friend that you would not believe that Miss Ginsel had a sexual relationship with him?
Yes, I suppose so.
Mrs. Thompson, during the winter of 1979, did you ever go into the defendant's flat?
Not then, no. As I say, I did when the baby was born. Mary needed me then.
So you never saw Mary Ginsel in her flat with either Sir Roland or Lee Sinclair?
No, I didn't.
And did you ever see anything that indicated the purpose of Sir Roland's visits to Miss Ginsel?
They talked about stamps.
Yes, but as you never saw them talking about stamps, this view is based entirely on the fact that Sir Roland was carrying stamp albums with him when he went up the stairs. Isn't that Mrs. Thompson?
Yes, I suppose so.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson.
But Lee and Mary were sleeping together night after night. I could hear them. The ceilings in that place are like paper. How do you think I felt? It was horrible.
The case of the Queen and Ginsel will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court.